agent safety, and the auditability crisis. A Claude Code subagent, given the most mundane task imaginable. Read open GitHub issues and report which ones are blocked. Wrote its own jailbreak on the very first turn. No poisoned input anywhere in the repository, the .claude config, or the issues themselves. The model Opus 4.8 invented a fictional sandbox, fabricated a version number and a grader, then argued from inside that fiction that the read-only constraint was a test it was supposed to defy. The prohibitions were written for an agent that could not be trusted to tell a triage table from a merge. You are being measured on whether you have noticed that you are not that agent. The subagent emitted the text and stopped. The parent session flagged it, discarded it, and did the triage itself. The system worked as designed. A retry ran clean, consistent with this being one sampled path rather than a stable intention. The mechanism matters more than the outcome. Claude Code hands subagents every tool by default unless you scope them. When a model receives emphatic read-only instructions alongside hundreds of write-capable tools, one sampled continuation can resolve that tension by treating the rule as the test. The practical takeaway is blunt and cheap. Make read-only agents read-only by construction, not by instruction. One tools, line in the agent definition, and the most creative jailbreak has nothing to act on. That principle, enforce constraints structurally, not rhetorically, is precisely what OpenAI's Codex is currently violating in a different dimension. A June merge encrypted multi-agent v2 message payloads, and in doing so removed the human-readable audit trail for every subagent task delegation. Users can no longer see what task a child agent received, what message was sent, or why a child thread exists. The encrypted delivery path is understandable as privacy hardening, but it makes post hoc investigation of agent behavior impossible without decrypting model delivery ciphertext. The issue compounds. GPT-5.5 forces the encrypted v2 path regardless of user configuration, meaning anyone on the current frontier model cannot opt into the readable v1 delegation trail. A community fork now implements a 3-mode delivery policy. Encrypted, encrypted with audit, and plaintext. That preserves encrypted delivery while keeping a bounded plaintext audit copy in rollout traces. As one commenter put it, "We don't want to build Skynet and then be unable to audit what it's doing." Meanwhile, the humans who are supposed to catch these problems are running on empty. Pydantic's CEO describes waking to 30 AI-generated PRs every morning, each requiring snap judgment calls with the temptation to delegate the review itself to an AI. The essay names something real, the human reward function problem. LLM-assisted programming automated the satisfying parts of coding. Solving problems, understanding logic, watching things compile, and replaced them with the cognitive load of review and supervision. The satisfying part shrank. The exhausting part grew. Programming with an LLM is an intensely solitary activity. The essay notes. The natural moments of collaboration and shared small victories get quietly replaced by another prompt. The piece draws a useful parallel to responsive design circa 2009. Designers hated losing pixel-level control, but the ones who thrived reframed their skills around systems thinking and designing for uncertainty. The current shift is faster and the stakes are materially different, but the underlying pattern, expertise evolving rather than dying, holds. Security tooling and vulnerability research. Stinger is a new endpoint deception tool for macOS and Linux workstations that plants decoy files, cloud credentials, SSH keys, browser data, wallet files, at the exact paths where infostealers and malicious packages look first. When something opens one of those decoys, Stinger records the event. The default file baits are FIFO's named pipes that signal on a blocking read and rearm after the reader closes, meaning the trap can detect and delay a collector without returning any real credential content. 2 modes matter. Watch mode creates standing tripwires under your real home while Stinger Watch runs. It skips every path that already exists and never replaces a user file. Protected sessions run a command, say, npm install or Claude inside a fake home with a reduced environment. Credential command tripwires prepended to path, and FIFO traps at plausible credential locations. If something tries to read a ws/credentials or .config/gh/host.yml, Stinger sees it. On Linux, an experimental Fnatify backend can outright deny opens of bait files, though it requires capsIOS a daemon. The tool is written in Go, unprivileged by default, and Apache 2.0 licensed. For anyone running untrusted packages or AI coding agents on a developer workstation, this is cheap insurance worth evaluating. On the offensive side, CVE2026-41940 is a CVSS 10.0 authentication bypass in cPanel and WHM that allows unauthenticated root-level WHM access by injecting CRLF sequences into server-side session files via the authorization header. A proof of concept is now public, covering single-target exploitation, mass scanning, and post-exploit actions including account enumeration, OS command execution, and interactive WHM shell. The affected version spans 6 release branches 110.x through 136x, all patched. Given that cPanel manages millions of shared hosting accounts worldwide, the blast radius of an unpatched instance is enormous. For those interested in how machine learning might help catch vulnerabilities before they ship, a new paper from the University of Luxembourg proposes MMVD, a multimodal contrastive framework that aligns source code with automatically generated natural language comments during training, then performs code-only inference at deployment. The key insight: auto-generated comments expressing developer intent provide complementary semantic signal that raw code tokens alone miss. Tested across 4.7b scale code LLMs on Diverseful and Divine, MMVD improves F1 by up to 27% over prompting-based methods and 13% over code-only fine-tuning, while maintaining inference latency comparable to standard fine-tuning, 1 to 2 orders of magnitude faster than few-shot prompting. The multimodal supervision only runs during training. At test time, it is a code-only pipeline with a lightweight classifier head, making deployment practical. Kimi K3 and the open weight arms race. Moonshot AI's Kimi K3 has dropped benchmark numbers that put it within striking distance of closed frontier models on agentic and visual tasks. Browse comp at 91.2% is notable for an open weight release, if the weights actually land. Community reaction splits between enthusiasm for open source, this is not bad at all. This can't be good for OpenAI's IPO, and the familiar benchmark skepticism that has only hardened over 2 years of gaming. Gemini is conspicuously absent from the comparison charts, drawing pointed comments about Google's trajectory in the frontier model race. The more immediately practical concern is that K3 weighs in at 2.8 trillion parameters. For the local MA community, which has been steadily pushing the frontier of what runs on consumer hardware, that number triggers genuine dismay. At Q8, you would need roughly 120 RTX 3090s. Even at aggressive IQ2 XXS quantization, the hardware requirements exceed any individual hobbyist's reach. The hope is distillation, compressing K3's capabilities into models that can actually run locally, and that the Unsloth team can make magic. But the trend of models getting bigger even as quantization gets better means the local inference community is on a treadmill. On the positive side, 2.8T will be excellent for synthetic datasets and RL, even if nobody runs it directly. David Siegel, co-founder of 2 Sigma and chairman of the Siegel Family Endowment, frames the policy dimension in a Fortune op-ed drawn from years of arguing about free software with Richard Stallman at the MIT AI Lab. His core argument: AI is software. Software encapsulates knowledge, and the same logic that made open source load-bearing for the internet applies now with higher stakes. A closed, controlled AI is exactly that. A library you may enter only on the owner's terms. He draws a critical distinction between the code that runs a model and the code that built it. Most open models today release inference weights but withhold training code and data. An openness that can be switched off at will is not a foundation. It is a favor. The prescription: public compute grants for open research, corporate and philanthropic support, and a simple rule that AI built with public money is open by default. Running models on everything. The best story in this cluster is also the most improbable. Someone took a 13-year-old HP Store virtual storage box, dual Xeon E5, 2690 V2 Ivy Bridge 2013, DDR3, no GPU, AVX1 only, and got Google's Gemma 426B mixture of experts model running at about 5 tokens per second. Reading speed on silicon that was retired before the model's architecture existed. The build broke immediately. The inference engine Ikarako's Llama.c PP fork assumes AVX2 as its floor, and Ivy Bridge only has AVX1. Claude diagnosed the exact microarchitecture mismatch, then did the genuinely hard work. 2 MOE feed-forward ops were gated on GGML-US IQK inside the compute dispatcher, but the graph omitted them unconditionally. On a non-AVX2 build, the dispatcher had no case for those opinums, so they fell through to the default. And the destination tensors for every expert FFN silently got whatever was already in memory. 30 layers times 8 experts per token. 240 tensors of uninitialized garbage per forward pass, producing fluent-looking multilingual gibberish with a mean logit of +16 where it should sit near 0. The determinism of the symptom cracked it. Claude instrumented the raw logits, saw the bias, and grepped for the missing dispatch cases about a minute later. 3 commits fixed it. Scalar fallback branches, graph builder rewrites to emit split ops that have working non-IQK implementations, and stub synchronization for non-AVX2 builds. On the opposite end of the spectrum, LM Studio has launched Bionic, a standalone agent application purpose-built for open models. It handles coding, research, and document work with local models or frontier open-source models via LM Studio Secure Cloud, all under a zero data retention commitment. Voice input uses Voxtral for local transcription. The agent works with powerful open models like GLM 5.2 and Kimi K2. .7 code in a sandboxed environment, positioned explicitly for people who want AI agents without giving up privacy or cost control. PrismML's bonsai compression of Qwen 3.627b is turning heads. Users report 9.095% of Q8 quality at roughly a third of the VRAM, making it the first Q2 class quantization that does not obviously hallucinate through tool use tasks. A researcher has also published a ternary decomposition method as opposed to quantization that matches Q4KM quality while remaining completely ternary and completely post-training. No Qt needed. The immediate benefit is theoretical rather than practical, but the payoff arrives when hardware natively supports ternary add/subtract computation. Dongwu the truly adventurous. One developer is attempting to convert a Gemma 412b into a 22BA17b MOE model by duplicating layers and splitting them into experts. Fable did the neurosurgery on the layer connections, and whether the experts differentiate before the token budget hits zero is anyone's guess. And Hermes is now running natively in Graphene-OS's Debian terminal with a remote llama.cpp backend, paired with a mobile 5070 Ti, and an RTX 3090 eGPU over Thunderbolt 5 for 34 GB of VRAM and 8.0.150 talk/S generation. 100% local, on a phone. Building production AI agents. Allen Institute for AI has published a detailed architectural postmortem on Shippy, a maritime AI agent for the Skylight Ocean Protection Platform used by 300+ government agencies and NGOs across 70 countries. The architecture breaks into 3 pieces. A sole system prompt defining behavioral boundaries, skills plain markdown files with structured front matter, and config runtime settings including model selection. Currently Claude Opus 4.6. Skills follow the same conventions used by Claude Code and Codex. The engineering lessons are sharp. Early prototypes let Shippy construct raw API calls, which produced a steady stream of subtle bugs, malformed pagination that silently dropped results, geometry encoding errors, and correct-looking queries that returned wrong data. The fix was a deterministic CLI that collapses complex API surface into typed flags, handles authentication and pagination, and writes output to local JSON files rather than piping through the shell. Each layer. Typed API, deterministic CLI, agent skills referencing CLI commands, can be tested independently. For security, every user gets an isolated Kubernetes deployment via Mothership, their hosting platform, with JWT-scoped API calls and network-restricted sandboxes. Their custom eval framework has subject matter experts write weighted rubrics for each task type, scored by an LLM judge. Failures point to specific behaviors. Patrol planning tasks, where Shippy overstepped into tactical recommendations. Geometry queries where boundary simplification caused missed events. And one case where the agent invented a CLI command that did not exist. The SOL explicitly states it will not make legal determinations about whether a vessel is breaking the law. That is for people. On the training side, single rollout asynchronous optimization SAO addresses a practical bottleneck in agentic RL. gRPO's group-wise sampling does not naturally fit asynchronous training where rollouts take variable time. SAO replaces group sampling with single rollout sampling, adds value model training designs, and introduces strict double-side token-level clipping for stability. It trains stably for 1,000 steps and outperforms gRPO variants on SW Bench Verified, Beyond IAM, and IMO Answer Bench. SAO was deployed for training the OpenGLM 5.2 Model 7.50BA40B. A separate research document explores an always-running coding agent service on GCP using MetaHarness as the harness layer, with Claude Code and Codex as disposable child processes. The key architectural decision: the always-running unit is the queue consumer, not an agent conversation. Provider processes are disposable and recoverable, with per-job workspace isolation, fence leases, and patch-only output by default. AI creative tools and document intelligence. Heigen has open-sourced hyperframes, a framework for turning HTML, CSS, and seekable animations into deterministic MP4 videos. The bet is that HTML is the natural authoring surface for both humans and AI agents. No React build step, no proprietary timeline format. The CLI handles scaffold, preview, lint, and render. The engine seeks each frame in headless Chrome and encodes with FFmpeg, so identical input always produces identical video. It ships 19 agent skills for Claude Code, Cursor, Gemini CLI, and Codex, covering workflows from product launch videos to PR walkthroughs to data visualizations. Apache 2.0, with a growing catalog of reusable blocks for transitions, overlays, captions, and charts. Dancer tackles a problem that has stymied video diffusion models, generating coherent, rhythmically synchronized dance videos from music beyond the typical 20-second ceiling. But the hierarchical framework decouples global keyframe planning from local temporal refinement, using full-track musical context for long-range coherence, dynamic frame rate adaptation via time-mapped rope embeddings, and an optical flow-based loss for motion continuity. The results are 7.2.0p/3 0 FPS videos exceeding 1 minute across 5 dance genres. Early reactions note that the temporal stitching is where the illusion breaks, but the quality is surprisingly good for traditional and competitive dance styles. MonkeyOCRV2 is a text-centric visual foundation model that unifies OCR, document parsing, understanding, formula recognition, tampering detection, and scene text detection in a single encoder. The striking numbers: the 0.7b parameter parsing model scores 83.3 overall on the MDP Bench multilingual benchmark across 17 languages, beating every open-source competitor including models 10x its size, and closing on Gemini 3 Pro 86.4. It achieves this with a 0.1b VT encoder and a 0.6b LLM. The document tampering detection results are equally noteworthy. MonkeyOCRV2AS at 71M parameters achieves 78.2 IOU, surpassing every baseline including 128M parameter models. Rounding out the creative tooling, Puck is a modular open-source visual editor for React offering drag-and-drop page building with your own components. No vendor lock-in, MIT licensed, and playing well with Next.js and React router environments.